Many issues in public transport, information, fast trains, where do you start? I have worked in the field a bit, so I'm going to talk about what I think is the important thing. I think there are so many things that are wrong and could be better, but I think if we can sort these sorts of issues I'm going to talk about here, a lot of those other things will get better. So I thought I'd start with a picture of some sustainable transport. This is one of the world's largest light rail systems. It's in Melbourne. Melbourne's one of the largest systems. We put these trams in streets full of traffic. I want to look at where we are, how we've been doing, and what our prospects are for the future. If I'm going to talk about public transport in Melbourne, Roz is quite correct. Public transport in Melbourne is a bus. What do I mean by that? Yeah, she said that 2/3 of our public transport system is rail and tram. But if you look at it the other way, where do we live? Then 2/3 of our residents live next to buses. They don't live next to trams and trains. And this is one of the reasons why we have so many car driving. Why is it important that they live next to buses? Well, because we haven't got any. The average bus frequency in Melbourne a few years ago was a bus every 40 minutes in the peak. Yeah, whenever I talk to someone in Europe, they say, "Oh, sorry, you said 4 minutes?" No, I said, "No, 40. 40. 50 minutes off peak." And it's one of the exciting things professors get to do. I went through every single timetable in Melbourne, and I can tell you that the average bus in Melbourne finishes at 6:53 p.m. at night. This is the bus network during the weekday, and this is the bus network on Sunday. So I asked the question, do we have public transport? And for most Melburnians, for 2/3 of residents, we actually don't have any, really. This is our service level on buses compared to the rest of the world. That's the bus fleet per head of population against usage. And there we are at the bottom, leading the way. Trams, we do have one of the largest tram systems in the world. In fact, my data says the biggest. Unfortunately, the trams are very slow, and they've been getting slower over time. And the reason is traffic congestion. Because although we have tram systems, the American word is better, we have what's called streetcars. And that's the share of right-of-way of trams in the world that are in mixed traffic. And we have the biggest. Toronto's second, with about 1/3 the size of us. And what's interesting is we've had French tram operators for the last decade, if not more. And there's France down here. You can see the French cities that have got mixed traffic right-of-way. Yes, it's less than Collins Street. This is the result. We take $6 million vehicles, and we're getting a lot of these new ones. We're putting them in the middle of a traffic stream. It's not terribly efficient. There we are. This is the speeds of trams around the world, and there we are on the bottom 20% because of that. Now, reliability is so bad that about 1/3 of our trams are not considered on time, even though it's between 1 minute early and 6 minutes plus late. It's a very wide period, and we can't even hit that window. Trains are another matter. Trains are very slow. We have some of the slowest trains in the world. 33 kilometres an hour is our average speed. In Perth, the new railways are about twice that. Reliability, our reliability of our rolling stock and so forth is terrible. The last time I measured it, the trains fail in service every 15,000 kilometres. In Sydney, it's about 50, and it's considered to be about 100,000 is world best practice. In Singapore and Hong Kong, they don't measure that because they don't have to. They've never failed in service, ever. Yet putting pressure on the railway by expanding it, even though it's so terribly unreliable, has been our way forward. We've all wanted to have better transit, but unfortunately the system we're basing it all on is pretty unreliable. And that's put it under huge stress. And we had a great journalist story a few weeks ago showing that there are 1,900 signal failures in the Melbourne network every year. That's 5 a day. To can tell you from my own work, that isn't a quarter of the problem. It's actually 4 times bigger than all of that, with all the other failures. It's a chaotic railway, very old. Yet growing it has been doing. We have been very successful in public transport. The railway has broadly doubled in usage since 2001. It's a great success story. But they're hanging out the doors, as we've heard from our audience. So how have we dealt with this? And the answer is very simple. If this public transport system is not very big, and you want people to use it more, it's got to be bigger. Yeah? That wasn't very hard, was it? So let's just ask the question: how have we been doing about that? And this is some real data I've compiled. This is how big the service has been in the last 10 years or so, since 2001. And the service in Melbourne has grown buses by 62% from a very low base. Overall, about 46% of service growth, and trains about 30% and tram about 9%. So, pretty good. However, have you noticed something about this graph? Have you noticed there's something unusual about it? You see, up to about 2001, it was, we're going to grow things. Yay, let's do stuff. And in about 2010, we stopped. And that's only half the story. Because during that period, we've had huge population growth, and it's getting bigger. And obviously, if our services are too small, we need more. But if we're growing, we need even more. So are we keeping pace? So I've looked at services per capita. That's the amount of service provided to us all. And what we find is, up until about 2010, we've been actually growing the net service per head. We've been actually trying to get that service better. And we've been going. But actually, since 2010, per capita, we're declining. We are not stopping, we're going backwards. I don't call that planning, I call that unplanning. So what are our prospects? Well, we have a road project. Look, it's all right. It's a very small project in the big scheme of things. It's got 2 parts, stage 1, stage 2. Stage 2 is by far the better performing part of that project. It deals with the problems in the west more. Stage 1, unfortunately, is what we're going to be built. And, it has very questionable economics. In my career, I did some work on it, and this is, of course, the great hope with the East-West link is it's going to deal with the Eastern Freeway, massive amount of traffic there. But unfortunately, it's not. You shouldn't think it's going to do that. This is a plot I put together of the traffic leaving the Eastern Freeway every day and where it goes. And if you look very carefully, you'll see only about 9% of that traffic, that's less than 1 in 10 cars, will actually travel east-west. So this road project isn't even going to solve that problem. It certainly isn't going to address any of the wider problems I've talked about, growth. It's not going to help you in virtually most LGAs in Melbourne, and apart from the nearby ones. It's a very small project. We do a railway project. There's a very large project being talked about called the Melbourne Metro. It will increase the capacity of the inner city area where we have all the congestion by about 50%-ish. It's equivalent of building about 5 Westgate freeways full of traffic, but putting it in a tunnel. It's very efficient. And no one's actually proposing yet that we build 5 Westgate freeways, because one's enough. Unfortunately, there's no commitment to this project at all. No government's committed to it at all, and none of the parties have. There's something like 300 million proposed in the Labour Party's manifesto, but that won't even start it, I'm afraid. So, population is expected to grow. Yes, we will get to 6 million according to the facts. I remember that at one point there was a strategy called Melbourne at 5 million. Everybody went, wow, no way. Well, we're past that, mate. We're at 4. The size of growth is broadly about the size of Adelaide. So we're going to add Adelaide into Melbourne, okay? That's a nice, simple way of thinking about it, all right? Now, Adelaide's got a very poor public transport system, but it's got 6 railway lines, 2 light railways, about 130 bus routes, and a very big guided busway. So if we are going to add Adelaide to Melbourne, shouldn't we add those services in to keep pace? In fact, we should add more than that to try and keep pace with where we are. But the plan at the moment in Melbourne is not that. It's actually less than that. And my clicker stopped working. Next slide, please. That's it. Yeah, so the current plan, there actually is no plan to increase anything in Melbourne. During this term of the government, I can only find 2 new projects that have been implemented, 2 very small bus routes. There is a very large railway project committed by the last government, and the last federal government, being built, but there's actually no more than that. So I hope you can see, even by a benchmark of Adelaide, which isn't very high, we actually have no commitments to try and expand anything. So this is not very good. It's not planning. Yeah, information concerns, ticketing concerns, I get you, and they are real concerns. But if you haven't got any service, and you're going to grow by the size of Adelaide, and you're not doing anything about it, you're going backwards. Yeah? So my message is that we shouldn't do that. That if we're going to grow, we should grow the services with it, to try and keep pace and actually get better than where we are today. I do completely agree with what Ros was saying about buses. They're very cost-effective way forward, and Smart Bus in particular, the network has been very successful and you can achieve a lot. Fundamentally, we need politicians that are actually going to do something about the problem rather than sitting back and not doing anything about it. Thank you very much.